Greetings. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Introducing Enhanced Web Application Capabilities with LoadMaster 360. My name is Rochelle Wheeler, and I am joined here today by Product Manager James Rago and WAF expert Andrew Howe. Before we begin, I will cover a few housekeeping items. There is a questions panel located in the lower portion of your screen. You may need to expand that panel by either clicking the plus sign or the down arrow to see a full view. We will take questions at the end of the presentation, so you are definitely encouraged to submit those questions via the questions panel at any time. Today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available at its conclusion. I will now hand today's presentation over to James and Andrew. James?
Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be diving a bit into a new feature that we released recently on our LoadMaster 360 platform. It's our enhanced WAF functionality. So without further ado, we'll dive in. Today's agenda will be pretty quick. We're probably looking at somewhere around 30 minutes of content and demo aspects. We'll cover some topics here. We'll dive into it, but as you see, we'll be going over a couple different subjects around what the product is, what its core pillars are, some benefits, going over the current WAF solution we have in LoadMaster, maybe some of the challenges that we have with how it works and customer sentiment, and then diving into some of the new capabilities, and then Andrew will go ahead and do a live demo for us. So what is LoadMaster 360? Some people may have seen some of the prior webinars we've done on this, but in essence, we released this product in last November. And what it is a monitoring and orchestration platform that is a SaaS product that works directly with LoadMaster. So today it focuses very heavily on, I would say, monitoring, analytics, telemetry, incident management, things like that. It gives a broad overview of how your LoadMasters are doing, the applications that they're serving, and giving you a lot more information into what actually you need to pay attention to. Diving into the core pillars of the product really quick, just to go over some of these so that people understand what the product's about, what its focus is. We'll start off in, let's say, the top left. We'll go over application analytics and telemetry. Like I said, these are comprehensive dashboards. They can be customized, they can be built by our customers, or we have a couple of preset ones that we've curated from there. The widgets are all customizable. There are different areas in the product that focus heavily on, let's say, the LoadMasters themselves, or the applications, or even the real servers. The certificate lifecycle management is about understanding and monitoring your certificate estate. So making sure that these things don't expire, getting alerts when certain timers exist, and later, probably in, I would say, early 2025, we'll be looking into full-blown certificate lifecycle management and automation. This includes Acme support and the ability to manage the certificates on the LoadMaster, changing them out, and creating automation policies to keep them valid.
Hi, James. Are you
Yes?
sharing the screen?
Oh, am I not? You should have interrupted me before. My apologies. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. I will briefly just let everyone see other aspects of this. I'll go back really quick. This was the intro into the LoadMaster 360, showing you a little snippet of what a dashboard looks like, the stark difference between LoadMaster and LoadMaster 360. You can see we put a high emphasis on the UX of it, how our customers interact with the product, the data visibility of itself, and then the product pillars I was just discussing is here. I went through the application analytics and telemetry, the certificate lifecycle management, and then I was just going to talk about the configuration management deployment automation. This is a piece that's coming soon. We'll be working on it next year. This has to do with the full-blown orchestration of load masters in a central place. So in LM360 today, like I said, it focuses heavily on the analytics, telemetry, incident center, and providing a lot of insight up to a unified view. Configuration management is about being able to make changes, policies around who can make these changes, audit history, and then deployment automation has to do with being able to automatically deploy load masters when needed, easily spin them up based off of profiles that you've created in the past. It's more about being able to do everything centrally in one place, and that's one of the last pieces that are kind of left from a main product pillar perspective before we go back and we dig a bit deeper into each one of these. Incident management, I chimed in a bit on that, but incident management has to do with one of our prior products, which was Kemp 360 Vision. We re-architected that, put it into LoadMaster 360, and it coincides with basically all the different information that we're bringing in, whether it be about health, device monitoring, performance metrics, some of the security analytics from WAF. Any subsystem in the product is capable of generating incidents, and you can control who those go to, whether that's either over email or in the future SMS and Teams integration, things like that. You can control all the way down to the rules of how those get to those customers, who gets it when, what days of the week. We've implemented a lot of additional, I would say, communication rules so that you can control and the noise that's actually usually generated from monitoring systems, so that you're actually alerted where you want to be alerted, when, and about the right criticality. And then lastly, we have security analytics and detections. There are a couple pieces around our ESP functionality that we've already implemented in the past, around authentication control and visibility into how users are authenticating with, let's say, your AD or your authentication service. And then today, we released well, a few weeks ago, we released the WAF Insights, but today we're talking about it. Enhanced WAF primarily focuses on the insights of, well, I'll get into it later. I won't spoil it. Just to kind of reiterate some of the benefits of LoadMaster 360, talking about some of the use cases I said before, but primarily 4 use cases where we improve the application availability. So providing insights on the metrics, performance data, status, things like that, so that you understand what's up and down, what's actually having some issues performance wise. And this isn't simply just, hey, what's up and down. We actually use some advanced analytics around some of the server monitoring that we're doing, and the information that's shared with our loadmaster. Simplifying fleet monitoring, that's just about getting everything under one hood. Some of our customers have just a pair of loadmasters, which is fine, but others have hundreds. And when you start to scale outward, not just from a loadmaster count, but also from a application point of view, many of our customers have hundreds or thousands of applications, regardless of how many loadmasters that they have. Getting a centralized view and integrating it into, let's say, the system where it can monitor it. You can drill into application analytics and understand how each one of these applications are doing. And then the integration into our incident center, where you can accelerate issue resolution, being able to notify the right people at the right time, only when it's necessary, and understand when you actually need to address a problem. And then lastly, broadening application security, being able to provide deep application insights and security data around, like I said before, either the authentication aspects, some of the internal loadmaster security stuff when you talk about certificates, ciphers, protocols, how customers are actually connecting. And then when we look at our WAF functionality, which we'll dive into after this, we'll actually broaden the horizon of how customers are actually being blocked, what type of attempts they're making, things like that. To talk a bit about the current WAF solution on LoadMaster, today WAF has been one of our main staples in our product for a number of years at this point. Um, Lots of customers utilize it. What it does is traffic comes in from client connections. We're able to inspect it based off the rules that our customers have applied, whether those be OWASP rules that come baked in, some of our mod security rules that we have on a 0-day daily reputation rule, or you can use custom rules. So the WAF inspects all the data as it comes in and does a good job at identifying potentially events that trigger and working with Andrew will talk about this later, but working with given rule sets of what is identified potentially as a threat. So today, customers utilize this. WAF works for them, but we've listened to a lot of different challenges that customers have voiced to us, or even within product management. From my perspective, we understand there are some deficits that we want to be able to address, but we need to address it in the right manner and the right place. And that's why we implemented this into LoadMaster 360. A lot of the customer challenges that I wanted to bring up centralize around either the data that we're not providing intuitively or the setup process. So even getting set up with WAF is a challenge. Um, Sometimes you need to be, let's say, an expert in either WAF functionality or understand how it works, or you need to understand even how LoadMaster and load balancers work. So there's a two-factor prompt approach there that doesn't resonate well with our customers, how it's currently implemented. The setup could be better. And this is what we strive to implement in Helm 360. Um, Also tuning it. So tuning is a factor of the WAF needs to start at a certain point, and you usually want to be, let's say, less aggressive at first while you're testing and you're ensuring that things don't get blocked adversely, like legitimate traffic. So tuning it actually is needed to go through a process. Customers need to understand that process, and they also need to understand each one of the, I would say, switches and levers that you can pull. That in LoadMaster, everything's there, and you can definitely do it if you know what you're doing. But you need to, like I said, you either need to read documentation, you need to be a product expert, or you need a better experience of how you get guided through that. And that's what we look to achieve here. And then understanding what WAF is doing. A lot of our customers saying, hey, this thing's been running. I think it's really doing well. I'm unsure. Or when they do look into it, they have to dive into the log files. A lot of information is buried in a log file. It tells you when we block, when certain events are actually triggering, and you can have an understanding of what uh, connection attempts are being blocked, where they're coming from, things like that. But you have to do some work on your own. There's not a lot of visualizations that we show off in the LoadMaster today. It's very limited, but that's where we come in with this new feature enhancement. This is a preview before Andrew gets into a demo. This is one of the areas of the product that specifically is around the WAF functionality. This one is looking at the one of the LoadMasters and giving a LoadMaster view of things. So I won't dive into all of this because Andrew will be going over each one of the components and some of the value and how they work. But I just wanted to go over more or less the what and how. And the what of it is, like I said, getting improved insights from LoadMaster WAF. There's a false positive identification model that we've implemented here. And we look to actually address the WAF tuning process as well. So there's a false positive activity area where we've implemented, I would say, some intelligent design where we analyze our connections that are coming in, the events that are actually triggering, and we provide you with a short list of, let's say, false positives that we believe you need to address. This process assists with tuning the WAF functionality. And so the how aspect of it, one, we can generate WAF insights across customer environments on an application by application basis. We also can identify false positives by parsing the logs through a known attack filters, removing all known attacks, and highlighting, hey, these are the things that are actually, these are your attack vectors based off group, based off IP, location, things like that. And then we have a false positive list where you can actually review based off of our guidance what you should do about this, and then an easy way once you go through that process to tune it, to be able to generate custom rules, to create exclusion rules, and to adapt your WAF to your environment's needs. So that's most of the presentation. I didn't want to bore everyone. I want to be pretty straightforward, and I also want to give time for Andrew from a live demo perspective to take you through the product and show you around. So Andrew, off to you. You can share your screen. Andrew, are you there? You might be muted. Rochelle, you can hear me, right?
Hi, James. Yes, I can. While we wait for Andrew, maybe we want to take a look at some of the questions that have come in.
Yeah, sure. I'll just end the share really quick, and if any questions, I can address them as well in the meantime.
Perfect. One question that we have here is, does the WAF rule maker work well if the application consists of reverse proxies of a different unrelated websites?
Unrelated, no, the traffic needs to go through the load balancer. So it depends when you say reverse proxy, the load master can act as a reverse proxy, depending on how it's working, like where you're pointing the traffic. If it's going through the load master and you have the WAF functionality turned on, sure. But I guess I would probably need more clarification on what you mean by reverse proxy. If it's more like a reverse from the outbound traffic, like a link to link load balancing aspect, or if you're talking about the servers in a reverse proxy nature. But in general, yes, you can definitely use WAF in that situation.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Andrew.
Apologies. Sorry, I was introducing myself, but I was muted somewhere, so apologies for that. Sorry, everyone. I'll just very quickly introduce myself, who I am, and why I'm here talking to you today. So my name is Andrew Howe. I am a WAF expert. I've been working with Linux-based load balancers for the past 7 years with a speciality on WAF. I'm also a developer for the OWASP core rule set project, which is the de facto set of free and open source WAF rules available online. So I help to maintain the rule sets, help to develop new rules, and that's sort of where I fit into the picture. I've been doing that for the last few years now. So I'll briefly share my screen and I'll walk you through some of the functionality. So share screen. Okay. So I'll start by going over what the existing workflow looks like on a LoadMaster. So here we have the front page of a LoadMaster. I have a simple virtual service set up. So virtual service, HTTP based listening on this address here. And if I click modify to take a look at my virtual service here, you'll see I've got WAF enabled. And so this is how you set up the WAF functionality from the LoadMaster perspective. So you would check the enable WAF button here, and that turns on your WAF. And what that does is it gives you the OWASP core rule set rules that will then start inspecting your web traffic, looking for anomalous behavior and looking for bad behavior to then block it. So that's how you turn it on from the LoadMaster virtual service perspective. So once you've turned on the WAF here, what do you then do with it? So as traffic is flowing through the web application firewall on the LoadMaster, it's inspecting that traffic and looking for anomalous bad behaviors. So the way that we can try and identify when we're seeing blocks and when we're seeing these OWASP rules being triggered is we perform false positive analysis. And I can either click this button here at the bottom, or on the left, I go Web Application Firewall, and I've got this option here, false positive analysis. So when we say false positive, I think that's worth touching on briefly what we mean by that. So when we have genuine, legitimate customer traffic passing through the Web Application Firewall, if one or more of the OWASP rules should be triggered in error by that legitimate traffic, that's what we term a false positive. So one of the rules has matched in error against legitimate traffic, and we want to prevent that. So to do that, we click on the virtual service that we want to look at. So you'll see here, I've got a simple test service called .qwiki, which is a simple Wikipedia-like web application that I've set up for today's demo. So when I select my virtual service, I'm then presented with two things. At the top here, I get a statistical breakdown of which rules have been triggered. So you'll see, for example, I've got rule number 930130 has been triggered here. It tells me how many times has it been triggered, 180 times, and it gives me some details about what data caused that rule to be triggered. So I've got a big statistical breakdown here, and I can scroll down and it goes on. So lots of statistics, lots of data here, but it's kind of difficult to parse. It's not easy for me to immediately ingest that information and to get anything usable or useful from that. It's a lot of information, yes, but it's not giving me any usable takeaways to go and immediately action. If I scroll down a bit further, I've got a histogram here. Again, I've got information about how many requests I've seen scoring different amounts of anomaly score. So which requests have triggered different numbers of rules on my WAF here. And then if I scroll down to the bottom, I've got the raw log file here. So I've got lots and lots of information, but I need to scroll down. I need to find the correct log line that I'm interested in. I then need to be able to parse this information, figure out which part of the log I'm interested in. So there's lots of information. It's very dense, and it's kind of difficult to pull apart unless you know what you're doing. And as James touched upon, there's lots of documentation, and that we've got blog posts, we've got how-to guides that walk you through how to look at this information, how to ingest it, and what you can then do with it. But it's quite a dense process. It's quite difficult to get to grips with. It's not intuitive. And that's where LM360 comes into the picture. So although the LoadMaster has all of the bells and whistles here for you to look at, it's not intuitive. And that's where LoadMaster 360 comes into the picture. So I'll jump over now to my LoadMaster 360 instance. So I have my test LoadMaster set up here. You'll see here, .qwiki LoadMaster. So this is the same machine that we were just looking at, but from the perspective of LM360. And there are two ways that I can get access to WAF insights for the machine that we were just looking at. The first way of doing it is there's an applications workflow. So you'll see we have my .qwiki I have set up as an application in LoadMaster 360, which is where I assign my virtual service to an actual tangible application, which is my .qwiki app here. So I can click through there and I can get some WAF insights from an application basis. But what I'm going to demonstrate for you today is what we call the device workflow. So I could also get WAF insights from my LoadMaster as a whole. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I can just click here on the front page to look at my LoadMaster. But what I'm going to do is you go to the top to infrastructure. You go down to device inventory, and this gives me a list of all of the different LoadMasters and connectors that I have associated with my LoadMaster 360 account here. So I can then click on the LoadMaster I'm interested in, which is the .qwiki test one I've got here. So I click here, and that takes me through to an overview for my .qwiki LoadMaster. You see at the top, I've got 3 tabs. The overview tab, what I'm looking at the moment. Health and performance, which gives me a breakdown of things like CPU utilization, disk utilization, and the like. But what we're interested in today is the WAF Insights tab. So what this is doing is this gives me a breakdown, a graphical, tangible breakdown of the same WAF statistics that we were looking at on the LoadMaster a moment ago. So it gives us some widgets here that break down the information into tangible, understandable statistics. So you'll see here my top 10 executed rules on the left here. what this is doing is it gives me a list of the top 10 OWASP rules that have been triggered. And it gives me a little donut chart here to break those down, and it gives me how many events have been triggered per rule. And it tells me what rule group has been triggered, as well as the rule number that's been triggered. In the middle here, this is perhaps the most useful at a glance. It gives me a list of the top 10 blocked requests by IP. So I can very quickly get a glance of which IP addresses have been triggering rules on my LoadMaster. And immediately at the top here, you can see I've got this IP address here. It's a local address, and the 10.local address here has triggered 18,213 rules. And when you look in comparison to the other top 10 here, I've got some 3s, some 4s, 5s, a 7, 18,000. That's immediately telling me, okay, this IP address has done something that I want to investigate. 18,000 blocked requests. That's a lot of requests. So just by looking at this here, I can immediately tell something's happened. I perhaps want to put in a firewall rule to block this address, or at the very least, I want to go and investigate what has this address been doing that it's triggered 18,000 blocked requests through my LoadMaster WAF. So immediately by looking at this, I've got some tangible statistics that I can then go and action. I could have pulled that out of the LoadMaster log page, but I would have to have gone through the logs and try to piece that together myself. The advantage of LoadMaster 360 is it gives me that information at a very brief glance. I can immediately tell I need to go and do something about that. Funnily enough, this was actually myself running a script a few hours ago to try and to generate a sample attack against my LoadMaster WAF to give you an example of what that would look like. What I'm going to do now is up here in the tab down here, I can choose the time duration over which I want to look at. So I'm going to switch now to the last 12 hours to give me a more balanced view. So I can ignore that attack that I generated last night and just give you a more rounded view of what the LoadMaster looks like here. So you can see now I've got, with that attack excluded, a more rounded balance of blocks per IP address. So this is a bit more of a realistic view of what you might see on an application basis. On the right here, you can see I've got a widget that tells me which locations are being blocked. So this tells me which parts of my web application have I seen blocked traffic against. So you can see here there's a few telltale signs of some scanning. So WP config, someone looking or doing an automated scan looking for a WordPress config. I don't have WordPress enabled on my server. So this would be a telltale sign of someone trying to probe, looking for some config files on my server. Got an SSH public ID here. So again, I don't have SSH turned on this web server. So again, that would be indicative of someone scanning, looking for low-hanging fruit, perhaps config files that I've left open on my server here. On the right, we've got some statistical breakdowns of how many requests have we seen. So in the past 12 hours, my web server has surfaced 18,437 requests. And out of those requests, how many have been blocked? So we can see 203 have been blocked, which is 1.1% of the total requests that have been served. But the real interesting bit here is the false positive breakdown. So as mentioned a few moments ago, when we're working with a WAF, if we're seeing genuine user traffic hitting rules and triggering the WAF, we need to stop that from occurring. So false positives are what we're really interested in. And you can parse the log file and look for false positives if you know what you're looking for. Again, we have documentation on how you can do that, but it involves going through potentially thousands and thousands of log lines to try and find the particular false positive that you're interested in. So the real value add here is that LoadMaster 360 has smart filters in place. It goes through your log files and it pulls out what it believes are the most likely candidates to be false positives. So it does a lot of that heavy lifting for you. And you'll see from those, how many was it? It was, so from 18,000 blocked requests over the past 7 days, it's pulled out one potential false positive for me. So it's gone through and it's pulled out just one request that it believes is likely to need my attention. So that's saved me hours and hours of work of going through log files on the LoadMaster, doing it all by hand. The smart filters in LM360 have managed to take all of that work and give me what it believes is what requires my attention. So that's one false positive that it's presenting to me down here in the false positive activity page. And I'll get onto that in a moment, but I just want to touch also on the map view that we have at the bottom here. So this gives me a graphical view of where in the world am I seeing traffic hitting my WAF. So for example, if I'm seeing traffic hitting my WAF from an unexpected location, let's say I'm based in North America and I see a sudden spike coming from Asia, for example, that might be indicative that there's something anomalous going on. Perhaps someone from Asia is trying to attack my service. Maybe I want to investigate that. Maybe I want to put some geo restrictions in place on my load balancer. So the world view here gives me a breakdown of where am I seeing traffic coming from. I can look at the different regions. So for example, let's say I'm based in Europe and I want to see where am I seeing traffic. For example, it will tell me once the data is loaded. So I've seen majority traffic coming from Germany, some from the United Kingdom, less from Switzerland, etc. So if, for example, I have a lot of customers in Germany, that perhaps looks fine to me. But if I don't have any customers in Germany, that might be something I want to look at. Why am I suddenly seeing a lot of traffic coming from that location? So that gives you a very simple to look at, easy to understand graphical view of where in the world those requests are coming from. So going back to the false positive activity view up here in the middle, if I click on WAF rule tuning, that takes me through to this page here. So when we get false positives, we want to stop them from happening again in the future. And the way that we do that is by giving the WAF particular instructions to prevent those false positives from reoccurring. So we try and tune the WAF's behavior to stop those rules from either executing again so they don't give us any grief going forwards, or we can exclude rules for specific locations where we've seen that they're giving us grief. So what LoadMaster 360 is doing, firstly, it's pulled out the specific line from the log file that we're interested in. So that's meaning I don't need to go through and try and pick out the line from the log file myself. LM360 has done the work for me and it's presenting the data immediately to me. It's also gone ahead and passed that log message. So it's giving me the information which rule number is causing this problem, what is the rule doing, and what specific data has caused this particular false positive. So you'll see here, match data 12 union. So 12 Union Street was a simple example I put into my wiki application. It's a legitimate query. Maybe I'm looking for a street address, but it triggers a false positive in the OWASP rule set because 12 Union looks like it could potentially be something that looks a bit like an SQL injection. So it's triggered a rule and I need to deal with that. So the way that I do that is I configure a rule exclusion to tune the WAF behavior going forwards. So I could do this by hand, and again, we have documentation on how to do that, but that requires application level knowledge of how to write a rule exclusion. You need to start memorizing how to do that, and it's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to put those together. LM360 does this for you. It takes the work away and does it automatically on the basis of these false positives. So once you have your false positive selected, you can then automatically generate a directive to tune away that false positive. So it's done it here, you see. It's automatically written this for me, and I can then put this straight into my LoadMaster. I don't need to remember how to write this. I don't need to generate any rule exclusions by hand. It's done it automatically for me. So what it's done is it's doing what's called a rule remove by ID. So it's saying for this particular rule number, remove it and don't execute it on an ongoing basis. So I can then use the copy to clipboard button here to copy that rule exclusion into my clipboard. I would then paste that into a custom rule set, which I would then upload to my LoadMaster. So that's done it for me automatically. I don't have to worry about learning this rule syntax. It's done it automatically for me. And we also have a different kind of rule exclusion that we can apply. So the default is the simple startup by rule, which does this rule remove by ID syntax, which turns off a rule. but I can also do that on a more granular basis if I want to. So we have this example of runtime by rule. And what that does is it allows LM360 to create a slightly more complex rule exclusion, which says specifically for the offending location, turn off the rule in question. So it's being a little bit more granular rather than doing a global switch off of the rule to turn it off for my entire web application. What LM360 can do is it can say, okay, specifically and only for the location in question, I want to turn off this particular rule. So it can be very smart about how it's applying those rule exclusions. And again, it takes away the need for you to have to learn this syntax. You don't have to learn this. It takes the learning curve away. It makes it simple. So if you or your engineers are trying to tune the WAF, LoadMaster 360 is making the barrier to entry much, much lower. It's applying these smart filters to automatically find the false positives, and then it's automatically generating the exclusions that you can apply to your LoadMaster. And the last bit I will briefly touch on is the incident center. We can also hook the WAF up to the incident center to generate automatic alerts if something is detected. So for example, if you see a very sudden and anomalous spike in traffic to your WAF, let's say by default you serve 10,000 requests a day, and suddenly you see 20,000 requests in the space of 10 minutes, that's probably something you want to be alerted about. So you can tie your web application firewall into the incident center in LoadMaster 360. That can then give you a proactive alert to let you know that something anomalous has happened and that there's some behavior that you probably want to investigate ASAP. So that takes away the passivity of having to log into the LoadMaster to see what's going on. LoadMaster 360 is able to actively alert you that something has happened and it's requiring your attention. So I'll pass back to James now. Hopefully that has given you a little taste of what LoadMaster 360 can do. And yeah, James, do you want to take back over?
Sure. Hopefully that was a great demonstration for everyone understanding what the enhanced WAF capabilities actually do. Thank you, Andrew, for showing that off. I think we have a few questions now that we can address. I'll just read a couple of these questions out. And if you have any other questions, feel free to add it in. Just some background, since Andrew gave some background. I've been at Kemp/Progress for like 14 years. I worked with our support team and led that organization for a number of years. So any technical questions I can address as well. So starting off, can LoadMaster 360 be utilized for on-prem LoadMasters, or is this a cloud-only service? It can work with any LoadMaster. So our hardware platforms, virtual, cloud, it doesn't matter what the endpoint is. It's highly dependent on your customer profile. So depending on if your company can utilize cloud services, so our cloud service is hosted on Azure. Specifically, this one is located in Europe West, which is in an EU country, protected by GDPR. So it's highly dependent on your use case and what you allow. To talk on how it works is there are connectors, and connectors they send data back to our cloud service. So it's only an outbound connection. There's no inbound rules that need to be opened, and everything is outbound, and it goes directly to our cloud service. So it's a few different ports, like 443. Usually, mostly everything is encapsulated securely, but it's, like I said, it depends on your customer needs and what your policies are. But in general, we can work with any LoadMaster that we have. Then we have another one. Is it safe to use the solution for a German authority, like the government? I would refer to the previous question. It's highly dependent on their policies and practices. As long as they're able to use other type SaaS services that are not inclusive to like a black site or an on-prem only situation, the LoadMasters can be operated anywhere. So if they're on-prem and they're or they're on cloud, it doesn't matter to us. It's just that LM360 specifically is a hosted solution by us, like I said, in Azure. So as long as you have certain policies where you can work with cloud services, you should be good to go.
Hi, James. I have a few additional questions.
Sure.
One question is, how many rules can I add to a communication channel?
There is no limit, actually. I'm sure there's a technical limit if you talk about the thousands of rules, but in general, the communication channels are configured on a per endpoint basis, like who are you actually sending it to. So those rules, we're not limiting the access to the number of users who can log into here. So you can send alerts to any one of your internal employees or internal people that might need to actually be notified, whether that be internal to your company or external consultants. But the rules can be tuned, like I said, so that they can be adapted to certain people only getting critical alerts, certain people only getting stuff for certain load masters or certain applications, so that you have a specific alert structure that's going to the right people to prevent noise.
Perfect. And then I have one last question here. The question is, how much data retention is available?
Today, data retention is limited to 90 days. We will, I would say, in the future, let's say the near future, be expanding that option so that customers can purchase additional models or tiers that will involve additional data retention. But today, it's defaultly set to 90 days. And if we need to go further down that line, we have investigated things like 180 and potentially up to a year. If we hear back from customers that they want to keep their data for longer, we'll have to listen to those feature requests and see what's feasible from not only from a technical feasibility, but also from a price perspective of holding on to that data.
Okay, that sounds great. That concludes the questions that we have for today. I'm giving everyone just a second to add anything else to the questions panel.
Yeah, and if anyone has any additional questions, concerns, you can either find me or navigate somewhere on our website to contact us. If you have questions about LoadMaster 360 or how this new WAF functionality works, if you would like a personalized demo with your company, or if you have anyone that is interested, we can definitely schedule some time with our solution architects and run you through that.
Okay. Well, there doesn't seem to be any additional questions. I would like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. As I mentioned earlier, the webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email containing the recording. In addition, the email will include a URL that you can use to contact us to learn more, to get a demo, and just like learn more about the enhanced WAF capabilities in LM360. So thank you again, and we hope that you enjoy the remainder of your day. Oh, two questions just popped in.
Okay, no problem.
So the first question is, do you offer a trial with LM360?
We do. You would need to work with one of our account managers. So get in contact with your account manager, or if you don't have an account manager, you can go through the normal contact us and be directed to one. But they'll normally go through a process of making sure that LM360 is applicable to you, maybe doing a demonstration, and they can work with us to actually establish a trial.
And then the second question we have here is, would it work for Plesk web hosting, shared web hosting?
I'm not familiar with Plusk, specifically the web hosting aspect of what they do. It's highly dependent. So I would say if you're able to push the web traffic that Plusk is doing through a load balancer, like through a virtual service, then I don't see why it wouldn't work. I just don't know how their models and clients are set up, if it needs to go direct to their service or if it can be load balanced. As long as it can go through our virtual services, and it's normal HTTP traffic, we can actually apply the WAF functionality to it.
Okay. We have another question. What is the licensing model? Subscription based and per connection to Kemp NLB cost info?
Um, okay, so today there's one tier that we offer called Starter. In the near future, we'll be offering some additional tiers with different features, different product capabilities, but in general, it's a subscription service, yearly cost. Cost is based off of country, so I'm not really going to go into specific cost, but you can look it up or you can contact us. But in general, the only restrictions that we have isn't, like I said, isn't based off users or anything like that. It's based off of the number of assets that you're monitoring. So our starter tier as default has 10 assets, and an asset is either a LoadMaster or a pair of LoadMasters. They count as one, and the number of applications that you're load balancing. So a big focus of LM360 is not about the virtual services themselves, but actually elevating that experience from all the different rules that you have over different ports for an application, such as, let's say, Microsoft Exchange or SharePoint or a web service. We're able to bring those together. You can actually create a construct called an application. And then all the analytics and telemetry that you look at in our system is based off that application. So an application is an asset. So between applications and the load balancers, that's what equals your assets. So if you have more than 10 assets, you can purchase additional assets that come with your subscription, but it allows us to be scalable for our smaller customers and then our larger customers and how they scale.
Okay. We have one final question. How do you compare to other vendors who have WAF solutions?
Well, that's a tricky question. It would depend on what vendors you're talking about. When you talk about dedicated WAF solutions such as Imperva or Cloudflare and things like that, it's highly dependent on what type of use case you're utilizing them for. Whether or not you're utilizing all their functionality, there are things that we have that they don't have, and vice versa. But when you talk about our traditional competitors, when you look at it from a load balancing perspective, where WAF is included as a feature set, I would say we're pretty competitive.
Okay. Well, Andy and James, I don't see any additional questions from our viewers today. So
Okay.
I thank you all for attending. And again, look out for an email containing a recording of this webinar and a link so you can ask any additional questions that you may have. Have a great remainder of your day. Thanks.